I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're listening to Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs, and the sins of the underworld. We're Ireland's top podcast for 2025, and now we've got a new website. So if you want to learn more about crime and criminals, if you want stories, extras, and podcast subscriber specials, go to www.crimeworld.com. Alison, there's an awful lot of talk in the media about these sort of AI-generated images of people naked in bikinis. So a very unpleasant one of Keir Starmer actually in a bikini myself. But this is a story that is coming from Tyrone, and there's a man being investigated over these deepfake schoolgirl abuse images. Tell us a little bit about it.
So what happened was originally, obviously, last week, a lot of stuff in the media about Grok, the AI search bot linked to X, formerly Twitter, and the fact that you could ask it to remove the clothes from people who posted pictures, and people were doing it on children, and Grok was doing this. So a lot of attention around that. Ofcom said they were investigating it. Elon Musk has now said he's changed the software that will stop it from doing that. But as that was going on, I was contacted originally by Cara Hunter, who's an MLA, who was herself subjected to deepfake pornography in the run-up to the last election. Her and a DUP MLA called Dan Forsyth both were subject to deepfake pornography. At the time, if you'd have looked at it, you could have seen it wasn't real.
Yeah.
But most people didn't look at it that closely. And I mean, I was getting into taxis, and taxi men were saying to me, "Have you seen the video of your one from the DUP or your one?"
Oh, really?
And I'm like, "They're not real.
Yeah.
No, they're not real." But anyway, these two young women were targeted. So Cara Hunter's taking this,
And what was going on with them with the video? It was some sort of a pornography thing.
Well,
they were supposed to be.
One of them was a genuine porn film taken off a porn site, and it was just a woman. Cara Hunter's a very young woman, very beautiful woman with long dark hair, and it was just someone who looked sort of like her. The other one, I think the Dan Forsyth one, had used deepfake to try and change the face of the person in it, but it was quite crude at that time, because we're going back a few years, and as you know, as we're sitting here, AI technology is improving every second. It's improving. It rewrites itself constantly. So she has obviously taken this on board. She contacted me then last week and says, "Look, will you speak? There's some girls who contacted me and they've been contacted by police. Will you speak to them?" I go to speak to these young women, and they were contacted by the police in October. And this has nothing to do with Grok, because what happened was Grok had a software update around Christmas time that allowed users to change these photographs. This all happened in September, October last year. Contacted by police, said, we think you've been the victim of a cybercrime.
Right.
They knew nothing about it. So then they have to go in to speak to the police, and it turns out they were on a photo sharing website. Funny enough, one of the girls said to me, she thought this website is somewhere where people would share, if you want to be photographers, amateur photographers and stuff, share pictures. But it's not like Instagram or Facebook where you can comment underneath, and therefore you get trolls and you get people making derogatory comments about young women or whatever. She said she thought, well, this is for the girls. We just post pictures here of our, out on our holidays and everything. Anyway, the pictures had been taken from that. She knew the original. She'd been fully clothed in the original and in the pictures that were found on this person's device. So this is a man from Oma had been arrested in relation to something else. But when his devices were taken, these naked images, and also he had the names and everything of the girls beside it. He had them all catalogued in this way. So that made it easier for the police, obviously, to trace who they were. He had made those pictures using AI technology completely naked.
Right.
And they were found on his devices. When he was questioned by the cops, and this is going to turn the life out of you, he said, "Oh, they're just for my personal use."
Oh, lovely. Lovely. Absolutely lovely. What age were the girls at the time that these photographs were the real photographs?
Here's the interesting thing about it. Our laws have not caught up with technology. So the only reason this is a criminal offence, and the only reason he's been investigated, is despite the fact that these are now young women in their very early 20s, 2021, the pictures that he chose to then AI modify were of them as children. One, I think she said the image, she was 17 in the picture, and the other girl had been 15 in the picture. So had he not modified pictures of them as children and modified pictures of them as adults, and then not shared them and kept them for, as he said, personal use, it's not actually a crime.
Right. So you're allowed to do this.
Legislation, it's not actually a crime. Now, in England and Wales, as of this week, it's going to be a crime, because the technology minister announced that she was going to make the modifying of images without consent into abusive images a crime. But in Northern Ireland, justice has devolved, and so it's not a crime here. So only for he had chosen, purposely chosen. But this is the thing. The girls know each other who've been contacted by police. So therefore, it stands to reason that they know the person who has done this.
So they just haven't been informed who the person is, but they're of the understanding that they may know.
They won't tell us the name of the person who it is. And anyway, because there's a Bloomberg ruling that means we can't name people before they're charged anyway. But they won't tell the girls. They said to the girls, when and if he's charged, and this will obviously all go to the PPS and they'll make a decision on it, then you'll be informed of his name. In the meantime, they're saying, well, if we all know each other, then he's been picking pictures of people he knows who we all went to school together. So did he go to school with us?
So they're suspecting everybody, in other words, which is not a very pleasant place to be in.
It's very difficult because we have a young woman who said to me, since I've been contacted by police in October, I have not socialised. I didn't go out at Christmas. I didn't go out in the New Year because I am convinced I know this person. I just don't know who they are. And I don't want to be in their company accidentally. It could be the boyfriend of one of her friends. It could be someone she went to school with. It could be someone out of her social group. It could be someone who she thinks is her friend. And they have done this and they don't know who they are. But when you think of it, they would never have known had it not been for this person was under investigation for something else. But the technology, and I'm not going to pretend I'm an expert in any of this, but I did ask Curtis Reid, who does a lot of technology stories with us in the Belfast Telegraph, and he had said, even if the AI technology won't do it, so if you went into ChatGPT and said, make this picture naked, it won't do it. But what I can do is you can ask it to write you code and technology that then will do it. And therefore, anyone who is even slightly technologically advanced will find a way around this and is finding a way. So it's not just naked. Now, these are young women who have had their pictures made naked, which would creep the life out of you, especially if you didn't know who it was. We've also seen images that people have modified to show women being beaten, women with bruises on their faces, women tied up, women in bondage clothing, women. I seen one picture of a woman who would be quite outspoken against the far right in England, and they had her in, Union Jack bikini stand beside, some skinhead with a bulldog. They're also taking people and making them look like the victims of domestic abuse and all sorts of other things. So it's the abuse of women, which is mainly what these pictures are being used for. It's just another tool, I suppose, if you're an abusive man, in order to humiliate and degrade. Well, for women who have a profile in the public eye, by the time you would start explaining that this wasn't real.
But do you not think, so some years ago when that politician was targeted with that pornography and the taxi driver was saying to you, do you not think people are starting now to realise an awful lot of this is AI? If anything looks unusual, feels unusual, doesn't look like it should be, they should be looking at it. They're beginning to know instantly this has been a manipulated image, which isn't excusing any of it, but it's slightly helping people having to defend themselves, go out there and go, sorry, that wasn't me, I didn't do that. It's sort of becoming much more in the ether. And actually that X story, while it was horrendous what happened, it sort of really brought all of that to the public mind.
Well, not to get my tinfoil hat on, but if that's the case where you're looking at it and going, well, maybe that's not real, that's AI. Well, then does that mean you look at real images? So such as we have very powerful people who are in the Epstein files, and there are pictures in those Epstein files of very powerful people on Jeffrey Epstein's island. You could get them pictures of people in other compromising positions, and those powerful people, now if you put doubt in that you don't know what's fake and what's real and what's fiction, what's AI and what isn't, it also helps people who have been involved in all sorts of nefarious activities. But this was something I hadn't particularly considered till I was speaking to someone from Women's Aid. The use of this kind of online abuse of people who have just come out of an abusive relationship. So threatening to send images to people's adult children, send images to people's adult parents, but also manipulating text messages and events. And you can put someone a place, like we could put you in a different country and say, there's where you were when you were meant to be somewhere else. But in terms of this, also, a lot of these abusive men would make false allegations. So they're like doctoring up messages that look like threats, or they're saying, well, she's breached a non-molestation order because, look, she contacted me, and all of this is all using AI. And so therefore, you have to be really alive to the fact. But the fact is that every day it gets better and every day it gets more and more difficult to discern what's real and what isn't, because the technology was quite crude originally. I mean,
and it is definitely, and now it is becoming it's so slick, isn't it? It's becoming so slick. I think we are going to, people are still talking about AI in a way they don't really quite understand it, but I do think very, very quickly we all have to educate ourselves on what there is, what to look out for, what to sort of question. Maybe we might become a little bit more questioning in all of it, and there's going to be bad and good with it, etc. But, I do think that talking about it and these stories coming out are making it, just opening our minds to the fact that not everything we see we have to believe.
Yeah. And as journalists, you were always taught to think that anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember years ago going and doing a course with Google in terms of recognizing fake images, because we see that a lot of times in terms of like global conflict. So you'll see, a picture of a, bomb site in Gaza or a protest somewhere else, and they'll say this is happening in Iran right now, and it's not. And so we would have had things like Tina and things like that where you could have reverse imaged a picture to see where it originally came from, and sometimes you'd find it was 5 years old and someone was trying to pass it off as having been taken this week. But as journalists, you looked at that. But we're in such a sort of, post-truth society, and the area of fake news and everything. It for the people who wanted to try and portray that and lose people confidence in what the media was showing them, even that was helpful. Because if you're showing images and then they're going, well, that's wrong, then you go, well, nothing's real then. Do you know? And I think that even if you're the like of Elon Musk or Donald Trump or one of those very powerful people who's trying to distract from other things and point people in a different direction, the fact that we don't know truth from fiction. And also, I have seen some really disturbing. There was a case last year of a child who was clearly a very vulnerable child. And she was pictured with an axe and a knife in her hand in Scotland. And the local media, and we can't report issues relating to children, so they were very restricted in what they could say. But you had people like Elon Musk, with 50 odd million followers. AI that image to make that child like Braveheart and claiming that this child was out single-handedly fighting off grooming gangs, when this child was clearly a victim of her own circumstances and in a very dangerous and precarious position. And we wouldn't be allowed to name a child if a child was a victim of a crime or if a child was a perpetrator of a crime. We can't name them till they're 18. You have anonymity as a child. And yet you have people AI and images of children and sending them out where millions of people then get to see them, and that follow that child around for the rest of its life. That child will be 30 and that picture will still exist online.
For sure. And I suppose going forward with media, and we both work for the company Media House, and they have, have you been yet? I have keep getting reminders. Have you done it? Yes. I keep getting reminders. There's posters everywhere. We're very, very on top of it here in this company, to train up journalists and all the rest of it. And it is going to be really important going forward for the media to be a safe place for people to find the difference between reality and fiction, and know that the trusted media maybe has done that job for them in the background, has checked out these images and these stories and that kind of basic journalism that we learned at the beginnings of our careers is still as important as it ever was. Checking facts, checking sources, checking multiple sources on a piece of information.
And AI will be really useful. AI is not all bad. AI has got really, positive aspects to it, as all technology does. It has good and bad, and we will be using it more and more. And now if you have an iPhone, if you do a search on an iPhone, it gives you the AI search before now it gives you the Google search. So everything is, and even in terms of transcription of interviews that we do. Years ago there'd be people watching this of a younger generation going, sorry, you did what? Where we had a dictaphone.
Yeah.
And you recorded it, and then you had to sit and listen and type every word, and then go back and then type and then go back and then go
That's
type.
Right.
And it took up hours of your day. Whereas now, obviously, you have transcription services, and a lot of that uses a lot of AI technology too. And they used to be crap because they couldn't understand our accents, but they've got better and better and better as time has gone on. So we don't need to sit and do that anymore.
Well, I was just earwigging into a conversation here in the office today, and I heard somebody say to another person, the only problem with that is it doesn't understand the Dublin accent. So it's still
you want to try can't face it with a Belfast accent.
Yeah.
It near had a stroke at times. It was like, what on earth is this woman saying?
Anyway, back to your case in Oma. This individual has been released, I presume, without charge while their case is, the investigation
It's on police
continues.
bail while this is ongoing, and then the file will be sent to the PPS, and then we should, when he would do get a first appearance in court, we should find out the name of this person. And I really do hope, because we do have a backlog in terms of just today, there was cases in court and we're saying there's a backlog. They don't have the resources in the forensics lab to check people's phones and do all of that there. So you would hope that because this is a sex crime involving children, that it would be on a rush, because I can't imagine what it would be like every day getting up to go out and not knowing
desperate
that tampered with your pictures and had you naked for, as he said, personal use, and you could be talking to them in the shop.
Paranoia can make you really strange and say stupid things to people. It would break down friendships. You'd act really weird to everybody, and people just wouldn't be able to understand what was going on. I totally get where they're coming from.
Yeah,
I'd be so suspicious of everybody myself.
Yeah, and we have daughters, and when you hit to think, I mean, my generation, and I suppose even the generation that came before me, there's an awful habit of people from Northern Ireland to go, oh, should we live through the Troubles, and they don't know they're born. But I feel so sorry for the generation of our children and even the ones come behind them, because we didn't have to face any of this.
I know.
And didn't have to be aware of it, didn't have to be alive to what was going on, didn't have to have the threats, the online misogyny, that everything that has came along with that, we didn't have to deal with. And I mean, I think I have said to you before, had social media existed when I was growing up, they certainly would not have allowed me to be a journalist. I don't think I said I wouldn't have got a job in the supermarket, collect the trolleys in the car park.
Yeah, no. I would have been with you.
Biotics been made public.
I'd have been doing the equivalent down here. The only kind of positive I can hope for with AI is that maybe someday you and I will be able to be cloned on this, and they'll be able to take our voices. We'll be able to have a natural conversation while the real us will be sitting having a glass of wine somewhere. How about that?
Somewhere, and I was just actually looking in the Irish Independence Day. We talk about you cloning, you could be somewhere else. The most bizarre story I have seen probably this year, and I know we're only in the first couple of weeks of January. The teacher, he was pretending she was pregnant, but going to school to get maternity leave.
Yes.
Maternity leave without a baby would be class.
Wouldn't it?
I really think it's wrong. Maternity leave is you have to keep a small child alive. Do you know what I mean? Imagine maternity leave with no baby.
Absolute class.
Time for life.
Yeah, and did it twice. Was only talking about it, I'm not sure about being able to carry off the fake bump and all the rest of it, but she did it, Incredible story. And as you say, we're only a few weeks into the new year. God knows what the rest of the year will hold for us. But we've a few things to talk about over the next few weeks. So we need to get our heads into one particular story so as we can talk with a little bit of finesse about it. And we come back to talk to you next week. So hope everything's all good up there.
Everything else is fine, yeah.
Excellent. All right. Be in touch.